pestilence, famine, his mother's death, climate change, the fact he can't get Marmite in California? Okay, I made that one up. Now he's claiming the news media has contributed to mass-scale misinformation and lies about the vaccine and created vaccine hesitancy. Sorry, but that is hysterical, uninformed tosh. If this idiot ever read the news, he'd know the media has been vociferously pro the vaccine. What hasn't is social media, where for months a deranged cabal of conspiracy theorists have been screaming about the government, together with Bill Gates, using the vaccines to implant microchips into our brains. They're also claiming it makes people magnetic, causes autism, and is made from fetal tissue. Yabber, yabber. But Thicky Harry clearly doesn't know the difference between social and news media, which became obvious at GQ's Men of the Year Awards this week, where he made the confused claim that the news media had been peddling mass misinformation and lies about the vaccine. Of course, none of this is to do with the vaccine. It's all about Harry's paranoid, unrelenting hatred of the media, which he despises, in part, because it sees him and Meghan for what they are. Because it dares to question their so-called truths and calls out their towering hypocrisy. Like when supposed eco-warrior Harry recently took a private jet from a polo match in Aspen back to his home in Santa Barbara, which would easily have emitted 10 tons of CO2. But, hey, we should know by now Harry's climate change mantra has always been "don't do what I do. Do what I tell you to do." He and Meghan hate the news media because its journalists behave like actual journalists and not the fawning PR lackeys they want them to be. The news media doesn't just swallow every outlandish, hurtful claim he and Meghan make. The pair of them have made a career and many millions out of taking vile potshots at the royal family while playing professional victims, whining about their hellish treatment at the hands of the Windsors. And that's why Ofcom's decision this week, which completely exonerated Piers Morgan for saying he didn't believe a word of what they said in that Oprah interview, wasn't just an embarrassing smack in the face for this self-righteous pair. It's also a big wake-up call for them. Until now they've operated safe in the knowledge that anyone who dared criticize them was silenced, but not before being slated as a racist, a sexist, or both. We weren't allowed to probe their so-called truths, many of which have proved to be untrue. But this Ofcom ruling sets a precedent. It means we're now entitled to say we don't believe everything they spout, which isn't just a victory for free speech but for common sense as well. Why should Meghan and Harry be entitled to free speech while the rest of us are not? It also means Has and Megs might now have to provide evidence, hard facts, for some of their devastating accusations about the royals. And maybe they'll now think twice about abusing their power by contacting the bosses of people who've upset them and demanding they be sacked, which Meghan did over Piers Morgan. They will have to do what they should always have had to do, but which ingrained walkery here prevented, and that's be able to back up what they say. Because with every day that passes they look less credible and more neurotic and desperate. Their motives look less charitable and more self-serving. And if Harry wants to know what peddlers of misinformation look like, he just needs to look in the mirror. How have we gone from one of the world's fastest vaccine rollouts to this Weasley dithering? Last week I asked why the booster jab was being offered to 500,000 immuno-compromised people and not everyone over 50. I said our world-beating vaccine rollout would have been for nothing if the virus thundered back this winter and the elderly weren't able to fight it, because their immunity had fallen below 50% 6 months after their second jab. Well, now we know it's all down to the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunization, which is still faffing about waiting for data about the effectiveness of boosters. And worse, after weeks of deliberation and much criticism, it took until yesterday afternoon for this Weasel Committee to say it wouldn't green-light vaccinations for 12 to 15-year-olds and pass the buck on to the government. This almost certainly means lockdown restrictions will be rolled back into schools and some may even close, causing lifelong damage to students' education. Because how can ministers defy this committee having spent the last year and a half telling us it has to follow the scientists' advice? For months we were told by these scientists that the only way for society and schools to get back to some kind of normality was the vaccine. So, now we've got the vaccine, but they don't want to give it to teenagers for fear they'll be blamed for any adverse effects. And all this despite the fact UK medical regulators have cleared the Pfizer and Moderna jabs for 12 to 15-year-olds, and countries like Italy, Spain, France and the US have been jabbing teens for months. How can we have gone from having one of the fastest, most effective vaccine rollouts in the world to being a Weasley, procrastinating bit player? Trending Parole board as a law unto itself. Vile predator Colin Pitchfork, who raped and murdered two 15-year-old girls and has never shown a shred of remorse, has been released from prison on the say-so of the Parole board. It insists he will be subject to some of the strictest license conditions ever set. Which begs the question why, if he needs such strict monitoring, is he being freed? Clearly they think he's still dangerous. But why does anyone trust the Parole board anymore? Time and again it has released maniacs back onto the streets and recently decreed that black cab rapist John Worboys, the monster believed to have raped or sexually assaulted more than 100 women, was safe to be let out. That ludicrous decision was overturned by the High Court and a review into how it operates was ordered. Incredibly, until recently the PB didn't even have to reveal the reasons behind its findings, and 80% of its decisions are made by just reviewing case papers and not face-to-face hearings with the offenders it's setting free. How can anyone tell if a killer rapist has reformed if they never meet him? The people who make these decisions need to be held accountable. We need to know their identities, their qualifications and the reasons they come to the decisions they do. Because when they cock it up, innocent people die. The color of Cheryl's skin is irrelevant. This might be the first and last time I stick up for the BBC, which is being slated over a podcast about R&B music presented by Cheryl Cole, You, Me and R&B. Critics are screaming the show should have been given to a black artist instead of white Cheryl. What tosh! By that logic every show, podcast, whatever that involved music originated by white people could only be presented by white people. Imagine the outcry if that was the case. Whatever people think of Cheryl Cole, she's been in the music industry for nearly 20 years and R&B is her favorite genre. This show is personal stories from her youth soundtracked by her favorite R&B music. That's her qualification for the job. The color of her skin is irrelevant. Festival goers are not the eco-generation. I wonder what Greta Thunberg would make of the revolting mess left behind at the Reading Festival by her supposedly eco-generation? These revelers, dirty tykes, left behind a mountain of detritus, thousands of tents, cans, beer bottles, soiled underwear, and used condoms. Now an army of people is having to clear it all up, which, it's predicted, will take 2 weeks. I keep hearing that the young are leading the charge to save the planet. How the hell can they save the planet if they can't even be bothered to pick up their own CP? Where did Helen Mirren's class go? Helen Mirren is 76 and, somehow, she always manages to keep it classy. Her gowns are glamorous and sexy but age-appropriate. She always keeps her arms covered because she knows bingo wingy arms aren't a good look on a mature woman, and her hair is always short and chic. So what the hell possessed her to turn up at a party at the Venice Film Fest with straggly, long white locks looking like Vivienne Westwood's mad sister? Related articles: food shortage crisis. Should lorry driver wages double? Woman jailed over £33,000 disability benefits scam. Hilary Mantel rants at Boris with plan to become European again.